Hey there. I am Dr. Lisa Marie Bobby, and this is Love, Happiness, and Success for Therapists. Now, therapists, today we're talking about something that makes all of our stomachs drop, right? And that's when a client says, I don't think this is working. I've been coming to see you for a while now. Nothing's changing. I don't know if this is really right for me. You know that feeling, right? So clients are like, and what happens to us? I don't know about you. I start to feel a little anxious. I've heard that before, right? And my heart starts racing a little, but throat gets kind of tight, and suddenly you're questioning everything and having feelings because we want to do a good job, right? I happen to know that you care so much about your clients. And when a client is saying that they're not sure that they're getting a lot out of their work with you, oh, that hits us right in the heart, doesn't it? And I get this because I have been in that side of the therapy chair as well. And it's a vulnerable moment for us helpers. It triggers a lot of anxiety, self-doubt, imposter syndrome. And I think it really comes back to the fact that we all do this because we care about our clients. We chose this profession because we want to help people, and have somebody say, yeah, I don't know if this is working. Like that's not good for us. We're here for a meaningful mission, and it's, yeah. So let's just carry this forward though, and I'd like you to use this as an opportunity to reflect on your own practice and think about what you do in these moments. But for me, particularly when I was a younger therapist earlier in my career, I start thinking two different things that can happen to us. Door number one, and the one that many therapists go to because it's more comfortable, right? To be thinking about the client, what the client is doing or not doing, and whether or not they're open to change, right? So we start thinking, well, I can't do the work for you, or, well, there's some resistance, or that super fun psychodynamic thing where you try to talk to your clients around, well, what would you have to give up if you did change, right? And there can definitely be good stuff in there. I'm not denigrating it, but I think that while sometimes that is true, there is resistance in a client. There are competing motivations. Maybe to not change is actually more attractive than changing in some way. Or they are not ready to dig in and do the level of work required to create the change that they wish to have. All of that is valid. And when therapists stop there or only go there, they can be missing some other things that are actually very important. And I'll tell you, after years of serving as a clinical supervisor, doing my own professional development work, but also working with countless therapists over the years, I've noticed something important. And that is when therapists are reporting that a client is saying that therapy isn't working, or when clients have said to me, this isn't really working, it is more likely the fact that something in the therapy actually isn't working for that client. And that can also be hard to hear, but this is okay. This is good. Because once we understand what's really going on and what is getting in the way of the clients being able to progress in the way that they would like to and that we hope that they will, then we can do things differently. But this requires therapists also being able to take responsibility for how they're showing up on their side of the equation. And again, it can be very easy for therapists to not do that and make it into the client's issues rather than having some humble humility and some valuable reflection on what it is about the way that we are showing up with our client that is also contributing to the stuckness or the lack of progress. And maybe sometimes it's a both and. So again, I hope I'm not upsetting you by saying this, and I may get some hate mail, but I think my goal, my higher mission, the reason that I love working with therapists and helping therapists is because I believe with all my heart and soul that the world needs you. The world needs us to be in this field and working with people. We're like the boots on the ground of helping people on a one-to-one basis learn, grow, evolve. And because of that work, in service of the growth and health and well-being of others, we have the opportunity to make the world a better place. But who is looking out for helpers? Who is helping therapists? And I tell you what, especially as soon as the ink is dry on your license and you're done with required coursework, with clinical supervision, you're working in solo private practice, you are floating in space all by yourself. Who is there for you to support you, to provide feedback, or even in a healthy, positive way, challenge you to continue reflecting on your own process and growing? And it's super easy for therapists in private practice to just kind of be doing things and lose access and insight into themselves. So, because I care so much about you and your mission, and not just your outcomes for clients, but also I think when therapists aren't growing and developing and evolving and doing the work, that parallel process along with their clients, they can get burnt out. They get stagnant, they get stuck, they get bored. But also, I think if you lose your edge and get less effective, like the career itself feels less rewarding. And that's when therapists flame out. They're like, well, you know what? I've been a therapist for 5 years. Maybe I should check out an HR role, right? Because it's kind of runs its course. And I would love for you to stay in the ring. So to be your big sister / clinical supervisor by proxy here today to challenge you, let's break this down. First of all, something that I see, and just be listening. Is this a thing for you or not? May not be, but something that I see all of the time and have certainly engaged in myself many times over the years is that therapists will often define, often proudly, what they do or how they do it as eclectic. I am an eclectic therapist. And so what that typically means is that a therapist has learned little bits and pieces from different modalities and has lots of different tools in their toolbox, which is great. Nothing wrong with that. And certainly a familiarity and competency with different modalities can be a real advantage and is part of general competencies as a therapist to have more than one modality at your disposal, because sometimes the same approach does not work for everyone. But when all a therapist has are tools rather than access to a comprehensive system for working with clients, things can start to get a little fuzzy because we don't really have a clear roadmap. We don't have a organized theory of change that we are operating from in our role as a guide and a supporter in the growth of our clients. Remember, people are paying us to help them create different outcomes, either mental health treatment, what is going to reduce their symptoms, or with non-clinical clients, where do they need to grow and develop personally in order to get different results in their life, their career, their relationships. And so we must have a coherent system that we can use to be able to understand what is going on with the client and then what needs to happen in order for the change that they seek to unfold. So when therapists are eclectic, they have lots of different tools. We have worksheets, we have activities, we have power questions, we have interventions, we have all kinds of stuff. but we might not have a roadmap. And this will intensify if a client is not making progress and they're telling us that, I don't think this is working. We panic a little bit, maybe, if we are taking responsibility, which I hope we are. But in that panic, we start throwing everything but the kitchen sink at our clients, hoping that some of the spaghetti will stick and something will work. And this can get comical. Personally, early in my career, before I got a lot of clarity around who I am, my theories of change, I do have several, and I will haul those out with different clients for different purposes. So there could be a multidimensionality here. But before I had that really well defined for myself, a client would express doubt about their progress, or I'd sense that they're stuck. And then I'd be pulling out CBT worksheets one day. The next session, we're talking about mindfulness exercises. The next one, we're doing some psychodynamic interpretation. I'm getting them to do some experiential enactments, like talking to the therapy pillow, like, what else would you like to tell your father? Like all kinds of things, right? Basically, therapy whack-a-mole. And you know what? It just made things worse for everybody. Clients were like confused. I did not have clarity around what I was doing or why. And yeah, it didn't help and it didn't work. The tendency to throw random interventions at our clients in panic is not the answer. And so instead, what I learned the hard way over the years, but what I now work really hard with my clinical supervisees, the therapists that I mentor in my practice, Growing Self, is that when we have an organized, clear theory of change, you have a roadmap that helps you answer the questions that you, as a helper, need to have answers to if you're going to help anybody, which is, first of all, what is the problem we're trying to solve together? Also, clear understanding of what is at the core of this. Because when you know what's at the core, you can have clarity around what needs to change in order to improve it, honestly. But then you need to have clarity around what is the process that this person, with my support, is going to need to work through in order to achieve resolution. And the thing that is important but hard to hear is that many times when clients are becoming ambivalent about therapy because they are not experiencing a benefit, it's because the therapist has not really answered one of those questions for themselves, much less articulated it clearly to their clients. And so we may be operating on some outdated ideas about how change occurs. I think many therapists are vulnerable to believing that insight alone is enough to create change, or that processing feelings, while it can be a very important part of the therapeutic process, will by itself lead to transformation in the lives of clients. And that's often not the case. Now, don't get me wrong, insight and processing, totally important, part of the experience, but it's different than creating real world changes and giving clients a tangible process to follow that makes sense to them and that creates different outcomes. Two things to know here. There are a number of high quality, evidence-based treatments, systems of treating mental health conditions. And as a therapist, I believe that it is our responsibility to have deep competency in at least one of them. When I am working with clients who are presenting with mental health conditions, I am a cognitive behavioral therapist primarily, and I also have competency and I will utilize experiential therapies because those make a lot of sense to me, and I will modify that depending on the presenting issue. That's what I do with therapy clients. But here's another truth bomb that oftentimes blows therapists' minds, also blows clients' minds, by the way, is that traditional therapy and those systems that we're taught for how to diagnose and treat mental health conditions is not designed to help non-clinical clients grow and attain different outcomes in their lives. We are taught behavioral health care. Our clients, particularly if you're in private practice and you're working with self-pay clients who do not meet criteria for diagnoses, those clients will often not benefit from us trying to do standard issue psychotherapy. Either we can fall into vague, person-centered talk therapy where we're just kind of like saying affirming things and asking open-ended questions and okay, bye, I'll see you next week. That's one thing we can do. Or to use a coherent system of treatment on a non-clinical client, but sometimes doesn't really work that well either. And the fact is that therapists are not taught the correct approach to use, the correct modality to use with non-clinical clients, which is coaching psychology. Again, I talk about this a lot on the podcast, and I know that therapists I talk to are like, that is TikTok people making crap up. And yeah, it can be, which is ridiculous. It should not exist in the world. I can't wait for there to be legislation that cracks down on this. And when licensed therapists become trained in evidence-based, reliable models of coaching psychology, it is totally different than charismatic, well-spoken people with a large social media following and great haircuts making crap up on Instagram, developing a following. I am not talking about that. It is simply therapists developing competencies to work with a different client population. And I think that we need to be aware of how we are working with different types of clients. Across the board. And this comes to mental health treatment too. I mean, I have also seen brilliant therapists who specialize in trauma and then say, yeah, I'll see a couple for couples counseling and really struggle because they don't have a coherent map of change for how to work systemically with a relationship. And so predictably, it turns into identifying trauma in one or both partners and working through that. And over time, people getting really frustrated, be like, I don't think this is working on helping us solve problems in my relationship. I know a lot more about myself. I'm not feeling triggered by my dad anymore. Thank you so much for that. But like, we're still getting into fights about finances. So what are we going to do there, right? So that kind of thing, there can be all kinds of stuff. And so this isn't about being a bad therapist. It's just around having visibility into the limits of our scope of expertise and who we can help with what kinds of problems and then how. These are the kinds of questions that clinicians need to be asking themselves, particularly if you are working with clients that are getting stuck and saying, I don't know how much I'm getting out of this. And so personally, I've gone through this journey. I have been there. Part of the reason that I decided to expand my scope of expertise is because when I went into private practice, and this was before I had a group private practice, solo private practice, again, I found that I was being approached by many people for non-clinical issues, relationship improvement, it's kind of wanting to figure themselves out, get more clarity and direction in their lives, decide on a career, that kind of thing. And I did not feel that I was doing a good job with them. I became aware that I didn't have the competencies that I really needed in order to work effectively with non-clinical clients because that's not what I was trained how to do. And so that's why I became a board certified coach, which is the type of credential that therapists get. There's another credential for people that bother to get coaching credentials, which again, you don't have to, which is ridiculous, especially for therapists, by the way. But there's an ICF coaching credential, which is for civilians. And then there's a BCC, Board Certified Coaching Credential for Therapists, which is administered by the Center for Credentialing Education, which is the same organization that does certification in clinical supervision. And the umbrella organization is the NBCC, where we all go to become nationally certified counselors if you're working on that license. So this is what therapists do. And as soon as I did that, I now had what I needed to feel effective with these clients. I had a clear roadmap. I was crystal clear about what I was doing with my clients, where I was in the process. I was able to articulate that plan to them. And I also had new tools and capacities to be able to support their forward work. Talking about motivation, about action planning, like what we really needed to do. And that changed everything for me. Before I had that, I did what I knew, which was how to help people insight, self-awareness, changing their thoughts, but it wasn't working. So I hope in hearing this, you have a little bit of clarity into what could be going on if you're hearing ambivalent or negative things from clients. So very first of all, make sure that you and your client are creating a very clearly identified issue and that you both have the same understanding of what the problem is and what needs to happen to change it. This is your shared conceptualization, and this is going to look differently depending on what your operating theory is. But if you don't have an operating theory, you won't be able to do that very well. It may be that the growth work after listening to this podcast is to bust out the textbooks or really think about who your ideal clients are, what your professional niche is, and what is the modality that would best allow you to be of service to that population. And then do extra trainings in that. Get a mentor who specializes in that modality. If your ideal clients are, like me, non-clinical clients, I invite you to come learn more about coaching psychology and how to apply it in your practice. You can come to my website. I have some free trainings that I've created for therapists because I believe so strongly that we therapists as a profession need to be claiming and owning the space of coaching psychology, because it is very legitimate, it's very effective, it's very powerful when it is done by therapists, and really help change the public's idea of what coaching is and who to go to for coaching, so that they don't wind up in an online course with some Instagram influencer that is going to be a waste of their time and money and maybe even damaging to them. Okay, sorry. Got on my soapbox again. So if you'd like to take advantage of the free resources, I invite you to come to my website, growingself.com. Come to the For Therapists section. I have a whole section on my website that is just for you. You will find webinars that I've done on what therapists need to know about coaching. I have a free 2-part training, and you'll also find access to other past podcasts and videos that I've done on this subject. I hope you take advantage of them because I made them all for you. While you're there, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and also sign up for my newsletter so me and you can stay in touch. I hope you'll find it valuable because I make new things for you every single week. But anyway, so you can learn about that. But additionally, clarity around the modality that you are organized around a theory of change, you're communicating that to your client. I think it's also very important to be transparent about roles and expectations between you and your client. So like, what is your job as a therapist and what is their job as the client? The other thing that's true, and sometimes why clients do get stuck, is also related to what we therapists, or when we have a coaching hat on, coaches are doing, or more likely not doing, which is that clients do not know what they are supposed to be doing in order to receive benefit from therapy. As a certified coach, I was trained in the fact that we need to be very transparent around where we are in the process, what's my job, what's their job. But therapists, again, aren't really trained to do that. And then we have clients who really don't know how this works and might even believe that coming and talking to you for 45 minutes once a week is going to change their lives. I think you and I both know that that's not really how this works. There's all kinds of other things that need to be going on. I tell clients that. I say that right out loud all the time. You know that just talking to me about the situation, telling me how you feel about it, is not going to change the situation. You're going to get more insight. You're going to have self-awareness. You might even feel better. But if you want this to be different or maybe not happen again, we need to take action outside the therapy room. So let's talk about that. I know now to say that out loud, but when I was an earlier career clinician, I didn't, right? Because I think we are vulnerable to thinking that clients know how this works and know what to do. So to be talking about that. Also, and this is something from a coaching playbook, although I think that it is helpful for therapy clients as well, working on clinical mental health issues, is that keeping track of progress is really helpful. Some kind of log that you can keep over time so that you and your client have a clear record of where you started, where you are now, where you're going, and that you're checking in around that regularly. That is part of a comprehensive coaching psychology system. There are modalities of coaching that we learn how to follow as certified coaches as well. But progress tracking is very important, but I think for therapy clients too. And also, lastly, and perhaps most importantly, if you have a client who is brave enough to say, I don't feel like this is working, what a gift. It can be painful to hear. We can get defensive about it. We can want to blame other people, right? We can feel shame, like, oh no, what am I doing wrong, right? But let's set that aside, embrace a growth mindset, and get curious. Like, from your client, what a gift that, first of all, they've said that out loud to you, because you know what? Most clients don't. They will just ghost and stop coming to sessions. Like, oh, I'm busy. Well, I have budget. I have to pay for a big thing coming up. That's what we hear. But for a client to say, I don't know how much I'm getting out of this. Oh my God, I love hearing this, because then we get to do some assessment and to be thinking, what is this client telling me? What were their expectations? How is this different than what they expected? Do they have a realistic expectation of how this is supposed to work? And if they don't, that is my fault, because I have not articulated that to them. And that's part of my job, right? But also on that checklist, do I have a clear plan? Do I have a shared understanding of what the problem is? And do this client and I have an organized, shared understanding of what needs to happen in order to create outcomes for them that we're both on board with? But then that $1,000,000 question, am I using the right modality for this client's presenting issue? Because you might not be, and that's okay. We can pivot and to think long and hard about what your professional niche is as a therapist. What competencies do you need to build? That's an action plan for therapists in this position. I teach this. And to also be curious about the other side of this, because again, of course, sometimes there can be unconscious forces at work with our clients that can get in the way of progress. But also, you guys, if that's your only explanation for lack of progress, you're going to be missing out on your own opportunities for professional growth. I hope that this discussion was helpful for you today, and I hope it not just provides you with some direction on what to do with clients who are kind of floundering or spinning their wheels, but also I hope that it has stimulated some thinking for you about your own professional development and how you're going to do that. So if you, like me, are interested in working with non-clinical clients, come to my website, growingself.com, take advantage of all my free resources. And if you have also been coaching curious, exploring this, some therapists actually start practicing air quote coaching without actually having learned how to do coaching. If that's you, please see a therapist podcast that I created not too long ago. I think I called it, Are You Playing with Fire by Coaching Without Credentials as a Therapist? Those, 22-year-olds on TikTok can get away with that crap. We can't. you can get into trouble. So please listen to that podcast. But my free resources, and I also have launched, after 4 years of working on it, a coaching certification program exclusively for therapists in alignment with the BCC coaching credential that awards not just that credential, but also awards continuing education hours that you can use in fulfillment of those CEU requirements for your therapy license, because this is part of a therapist's professional development. It is in alignment with what we do, and I am an approved continuing education provider. Everybody wins in this scenario, and you can learn more about that on my website as well, growingself.com. Okay, you guys, thanks for hanging out today, and I will be back in touch next week with another episode of Love, Happiness, and Success for Therapists.